I don't care who you were outside these walls. Pretty boy, in here you belong to me now." The clock on the guard tower showed 9:15 in the morning as a bus rolled through the main gate of Indiana Youth Center. Mike Tyson sat alone in the back of the bus with his wrists locked in heavy steel chains that clinked with every bump. "End of the line, champ," the guard said without looking back, his voice flat and bored like he had said this 1,000 times. Mike stood up slow, his thick neck and wide shoulders filling the narrow space between the seats like a bull in a cage. 5 guards waited outside with their hands on their belts, watching the most famous man to ever walk through their doors step down. "Welcome to Indiana Youth Center, Mr. Tyson. You will find we treat everyone the same here, no matter what their name is." Mike said nothing and just nodded once, his dark eyes moving slow across every face and every corner of the cold gray room. "I need you to sign these forms and put your thumb on the ink pad right here," she said, sliding papers across the counter. His hands were the hands of a fighter, thick and heavy with scars that told stories of 100 battles won in the ring. The guards led Mike down a long hall where every inmate in every cell stopped what they were doing and turned to stare. "That is Iron Mike," Torres whispered to his cellmate, his eyes going wide like a kid seeing a ghost walk past his door. "No way they put the heavyweight champ in here with us. This has to be some kind of sick joke or something." Mike kept his eyes forward and his back straight, walking like a man who had faced worse things than prison bars and hard stares. The common room went dead silent when Mike walked through the door, and every conversation stopped like someone had pressed pause on time. One man did not move or look surprised. Big Ray sat at the center table like a king on his throne, waiting. "Well, look what the cat dragged in. The great Mike Tyson finally gets to see how real men live behind these walls." Mike stopped walking and turned his head slow, his eyes locking onto Big Ray like a wolf spotting another wolf in his territory. The other inmates moved back fast, clearing the space between the two men like they knew what was about to happen next. "All right, everyone. Stay calm and keep your hands where I can see them. Nobody wants trouble on the new guy's first day." Big Ray stood up from his chair, and his full size became clear. He was 3 inches taller than Mike, and looked like a mountain. His fists were huge and covered in the marks of a man who had been fighting his whole life, long before any boxing ring. "You know who I am," Mike said, his voice soft and high like it always was, which made his words hit even harder somehow. "I know you, a man who got beat by a nobody named Buster Douglas. I know you ain't nothing special no more, champ." The room felt like a bomb about to go off, with every man holding his breath and waiting to see who would make the first move. "Big Ray runs this block. He put 3 men in the hospital last month, and none of them could even walk right after." Mike tilted his head to one side like a fighter measuring his opponent, something dangerous waking up behind his calm, dark eyes right then. "Here is how this works, pretty boy. You give me half your commissary every week, or I make your life a living nightmare." Mike laughed, a short, quiet sound that made Big Ray's face twist with anger, because nobody had ever laughed at him in this place. 5 other big men stood up from different tables and moved to stand behind Big Ray, forming a wall of muscle and mean faces. "You think this is funny, Tyson? My boy Ray here killed a man with his bare hands. You just fight for money like a trained dog." "I am calling for backup right now," Martinez said into his radio, his voice shaking just a little as he watched the scene unfold fast. Mike stood there looking almost bored, his hands hanging loose and easy at his sides, like he was waiting for a bus, not trouble. "You think you hard because you knocked out some fat guys on television. In here I am the heavyweight champion, and that is the real truth. I've been fighting since I was 13 years old in Brownsville. Television was just where rich people finally got to watch me work." Thunder rolled outside as dark clouds covered the morning sun, and the lights inside the common room flickered once, like a warning sign. "Brownsville," Torres said to the man next to him, his voice barely above a whisper now, his face gone pale with understanding suddenly. What is the big deal about Brownsville? It is just some neighborhood in Brooklyn. Why does that matter so much to everybody here right now? Brownsville is the murder capital of New York. That is where kids learn to kill before they learn to read books in school. Man, Big Ray's men started to spread out in a half circle, moving to cut off any escape route Mike might try to use. The one they called Snake slid to the left, his thin body moving quick and low, like the creature he was named after in here. Brick went right, his 300 pounds of muscle making the floor seem to shake with every heavy step he took toward Mike. Mike's eyes moved from man to man, tracking them all at once the way a fighter tracks opponents in the ring before the bell. Big Ray reached behind his back and pulled out a metal shank, 6 inches long with tape wrapped around the handle for better grip. The whole room seemed to suck in air at once, and even the guards at the door looked scared of what was about to happen. Put that weapon down right now, Ray. I mean it. This is your last warning before we come in there with everything we got. Stay out of this, Martinez. This is between me and the pretty boy here, and you know better than to get in my business. Mike looked at the blade like it was a toy, his face showing nothing but the empty calm of a man who had seen real danger before. You think that little piece of metal scares me? I grew up dodging bullets from men twice as mean as you'll ever be in life. The storm outside grew stronger, and water streaked down the dirty windows like tears as the 6 men took another step closer. Big Ray moved first. He lunged at Mike with the shank aimed at his chest. Moving fast for a man his size and age, Mike slipped to the left so smooth it looked like magic, the blade cutting nothing but empty air where his body had been 1 second ago. Big Ray stumbled forward, thrown off by his own force when the blade hit nothing, his huge body suddenly looking clumsy and slow. Mike's right hand came up from below like a piston, the same right hand that had knocked out 37 men in professional boxing rings. The punch landed clean on Big Ray's chin, and the sound of bone hitting bone echoed through the silent room like a gunshot blast. Big Ray's eyes went white, and his whole body turned off, like someone had pulled the plug on a machine running on anger alone. The big man fell straight down like a tree cut at the base, his 300 pounds hitting the concrete floor with a sound like thunder. Nobody moved. Big Ray lay flat on his back with his eyes closed, and his 5 men stood there like statues made of fear. One punch, Darnell said, his voice cracking like a boy's, his tough guy act falling away in one single terrible moment of truth. Snake put his hands up and started backing away, his thin body shaking now, all the threat gone out of him like air from a balloon. Mike turned to look at the other 5, his face still showing that same empty calm, like dropping Big Ray had cost him nothing at all. Brick started to move forward, his loyalty to Ray pushing him, but his feet stopped when he saw Mike's eyes lock onto him like targets. You want to be next? I got nothing but time in here, and I've been waiting my whole life to meet men like you. Brick stepped back fast, and all 5 men moved away together, their eyes on the floor, their pride broken in front of everyone. Holy Mother of God, Martinez whispered, his baton dropping to his side as he stared at the scene that had just happened in 10 seconds. We need medical in the common room now. Big Ray is down and he is not moving, and I don't think he is getting up soon. Mike walked to an empty table near the window and sat down by himself, while guards rushed to check on the man on the floor. He looked out the window at the rain falling down, his hands folded on the table in front of him like a man at prayer. That is the baddest man on the planet, Torres said to himself, shaking his head slow. His whole view of the world changed now forever. 4 medics rushed in with a stretcher and pushed through the crowd of inmates who moved aside fast without being told to move. His pulse is weak but steady. He has got a broken jaw for sure. Maybe a cracked skull too from how hard his head hit the ground. Big Ray's jaw was already turning colors, purple and black spreading across his face like spilled ink on paper, telling the whole story clear. They loaded the big man onto the stretcher, and his crew could only watch as their leader was carried out like broken furniture. Warden Thompson burst through the door, his face red with anger, his gold badge shining under the harsh lights of the common room. What the hell happened here? I told everyone that Tyson was to be left alone. Who started this mess that I now have to clean? Sir, Big Ray pulled a shank on the new inmate. Tyson was just defending himself from what I saw, and it was over real fast. Every inmate in the room nodded their heads, even Big Ray's crew, because nobody wanted to be the one to lie about what happened. Ray started it, Warden. He pulled the knife first, and Tyson didn't have no choice but to do what he did to stay alive. The warden walked over to where Mike was sitting and stood there for a moment, looking down at the man who had just changed everything. I didn't want any trouble, Warden. I just want to do my time and go home, but I won't let any man kill me today. Thompson pulled out a chair and sat down across from Mike, his voice dropping low so only the two of them could hear his words. You just knocked out the most dangerous man in this prison with one punch. Do you understand what that means for you in here now? It means nobody else will try that stupid stuff with me. And it means you won't have as much trouble keeping order around here. The warden leaned back and rubbed his chin, his mind working on how to handle this new reality that had fallen into his lap. The other inmates started to move again, finding seats and going back to their cards and conversations, but their eyes kept moving back to Mike. You'll have to go to solitary for 24 hours. That is the rule for fighting, and I can't break it even for self-defense cases. Mike stood up without arguing, his face still calm, accepting what was coming, because he knew the rules were the same for every man here. But between you and me, Tyson, Big Ray had that coming for a long time, and nobody in this building is going to miss him much. 2 guards walked over to escort Mike to solitary, and every inmate in the room watched him go like they were watching a king leave his court. Mike walked out with his head up and his shoulders back, looking nothing like a prisoner and everything, like a man who owned the whole place. I've been here 3 years and never saw anything like that. Big Ray ruled this place like a god, and Mike ended him in 1 second. That ain't a boxer, man, that is something else. Something they made in a lab or brought up from hell to walk among regular people. Guards led Mike down a long, dark hallway where the lights buzzed and flickered, and the air smelled like sweat and old pain. This is you for the next 24 hours, Martinez said, turning the key in the heavy lock, the sound echoing off the concrete walls loud. The cell was tiny, just big enough for a bed and a toilet, with walls that had been scratched by 1,000 desperate men before. Mike stepped inside and looked around, his face showing nothing, like this dark little box was no different than a 5-star hotel room to him. Can I ask you something, Tyson? How did you stay so calm when 6 men were coming at you with a knife out in the open? Fear is like fire. It can cook your food or burn down your house depending on whether you control it or let it control you. Martinez closed the door slow, the heavy metal swinging shut with a boom, leaving Mike alone in the dark with nothing but his thoughts. Mike sat down on the thin mattress and let the darkness wrap around him like a blanket he had known his whole hard life long. In the silence of that cell, with nothing but the drip of water somewhere far away, Mike Tyson began to remember how he got there. He closed his eyes and let his mind drift back through time, back to the streets of Brooklyn where everything had started years ago. The streets of Brownsville in 1977 were hard and cold, full of broken glass and broken dreams scattered everywhere you looked around. A small boy stood on the corner watching the older kids run past with stolen goods in their hands and fear in their fast feet. One day I am going to be stronger than all of them, the boy said to himself, his small fists tight at his sides in the cold. 5 bigger boys came around the corner fast, their eyes locked on the small kid like wolves who had found a rabbit alone in the open. There is that fat little kid again. Let's see what he has got in his pockets today, and maybe teach him another lesson about respect. Young Mike pressed his back against the cold brick wall, his eyes moving fast, looking for a way out that did not exist anywhere. The 5 boys spread out and blocked every exit, their laughter bouncing off the walls of the dirty alley like echoes of all his past pain. Marcus grabbed the front of Mike's jacket and lifted him up, the smaller boy's feet leaving the ground as he dangled there helpless and small. Go ahead and cry, fat boy. Nobody's coming to save you. Not your drunk mama, not your gone daddy. Nobody at all in this world. Young Mike spit right in the bigger boy's face, and the whole alley went quiet for one long second before the beating started again. They threw him down and kicked him over and over, their shoes finding his ribs and back and head while he curled up tight. Blood ran from his split lip and mixed with the dirty water on the ground, but the boy did not scream or beg them to stop. That is what you get for thinking you are tough. Next time you see us coming, you better run the other way fast as you can. The boys walked off laughing and slapping hands, leaving the small broken figure on the ground, like trash that nobody cared about at all. Mike pushed himself up on shaking arms, his whole body screaming with pain. But something new burning in his chest now, something like fire and hate. He put his fists up like he had seen boxers do on the old television at the corner store, throwing punches at the empty air. I am going to learn how to fight for real, he said out loud, his voice shaking but sure, a promise made to himself and to the world. Mike opened his eyes in the dark cell, the memory of that alley still fresh in his mind after all these years gone by fast. He rubbed the scar on his right hand where Marcus's tooth had cut him the day he finally fought back and won for the first time. Mike stood and stretched his arms up high, his muscles moving under the orange fabric, like cables under the hood of a powerful car engine. The slot in the door slid open and a pair of eyes looked in, checking to make sure the prisoner was still alive and behaving himself okay. You got about 20 more hours in here, Tyson. Try to get some sleep, because tomorrow is going to be a very long day for you. I've slept in worse places than this. Officer, a room with a bed and no rats is better than most places I knew growing up back home. The slot closed with a metal clang, and Mike was alone again in the dark, with nothing but time and memories to keep him company. His mind drifted again, this time to a white house on a green hill in Catskill, where an old man had changed his life forever. Cus D'Amato stood at the door of his gym, watching a 14-year-old Mike Tyson hit the heavy bag, like he wanted to kill it. Harder, the old man yelled across the gym, his voice cutting through the sound of leather hitting leather and the boy's heavy breathing filling the room. Cus, I've been hitting this bag for 2 hours straight. My hands are bleeding through the wraps, and I can barely feel my arms right now. Pain is just fear leaving your body, son, and you have more fear in you than any fighter I have ever seen in my long life. I am not scared of nothing, Cus. I grew up in Brownsville where kids die every day, and I never ran from a fight once. The fear I am talking about isn't fear of getting hurt, Mike. It is fear of being nobody, fear of being forgotten, fear of being unloved forever. The gym was quiet now except for the creak of the bag swinging slow, and Mike stood there with Cus's words sinking deep into his young heart. How do you know about that, Cus? How do you know what I am scared of when I never told nobody about the things inside my head? Because I see myself in you, boy. I was angry and alone once too, and boxing saved my life the same way it is going to save yours. You really think I can be somebody, Cus? You really think a fat kid from the projects can be the heavyweight champion of the whole world? I don't think it, Mike. I know it like I know the sun will rise tomorrow, and I am going to make you into the most feared man alive. Cus climbed into the ring and held the ropes open for Mike, his old body moving slow but his spirit burning bright with purpose and belief. Mike climbed through the ropes and stood in the center of the ring, and for the first time in his life he felt like he belonged somewhere. This is the peak, Abu style, hands up high by your face, chin down, and you move your head like this so nobody can hit you clean. Mike copied the stance and it looked like he had been doing it his whole life. QS smiled because he knew he had found something special. Cus threw a slow right hand at Mike's head, and the boy slipped it smooth without even thinking, his body knowing what to do before his brain caught up. Yes, that is it. You are a natural, Mike. God made you to do this, and I am just here to show you what you already know inside yourself. Back in the cell, Mike smiled at the ceiling as he remembered Cuss, the only father he ever really had in his whole sad, broken life. A single tear ran down his face because Cuss had died in 1985, just 1 year before Mike became the youngest heavyweight champion ever in history. "I let you down, old man," Mike said to the empty room, his voice thick with pain he never let anybody see when people were watching him. The door slot opened, and a tray of food slid through. Gray meat and cold vegetables and bread that looked like it had been made last week sometime. "Thanks," Mike said to whoever was on the other side, his voice flat, knowing this was going to be his life for the next 3 years ahead. He picked up the tray and sat back on the bed, eating slow because there was nothing else to do, and the food was all he had right now. The next morning, the common room felt different. Big Ray's chair sat empty and nobody dared to take it, because nobody knew what came next. Darnell sat by himself at a corner table, his eyes on the door, waiting to see if Mike would come back and what he would do. "What do we do now?" Ray's in the hospital with his jaw wired shut, and everybody's looking at us like we're next on the list. "I don't know, man. Maybe we just keep our heads down and stay out of Tyson's way until we figure out how things work now." The doors swung open and Mike walked through, the two guards behind him stopping at the entrance while he moved into the room alone and calm. His eyes moved across every face in the room, reading them all in less than 2 seconds, the way a fighter reads an opponent before battle. Nobody moved. 15 grown men sat frozen like statues, their breakfast getting cold in front of them while they waited to see what happened next. Torres gave a small nod of respect, and Mike nodded back. Just two men who understood how things worked in places like this without needing words. Mike walked toward the food line, and every man in his path moved aside fast, creating a clear road for him without anyone saying a word. "Here you go, champ. I put a little extra on there for you because you look like a man who needs his strength for the day." "I appreciate that, old-timer. What is your name?" "I like to know the names of people who show me kindness in a place like this here." "Name's Benny. Been in here 22 years for something I did when I was young and stupid. Got about 5 more to go before freedom." "Nice to meet you, Benny. You keep putting extra food on my tray and I'll make sure nobody bothers you while I am in here with you." Mike took his tray to an empty table near the window and sat down facing the room, his back to the wall like a man who knew better. Brick stood up from his table and started walking toward Mike, his huge body moving slow and careful, his hands open and visible at his sides. Mike stopped eating and watched the big man come closer, his body relaxed but ready, like a cobra that could strike at any moment if needed. "I come in peace, man. I just want to talk for a minute if that is okay with you. No trouble. I swear on my mother's grave right now." "Sit down then." A man who swears on his mother's grave is either telling the truth or the worst kind of liar there is around. Brick lowered himself into the chair slow, the metal legs groaning under his 300 pounds as he folded his big hands on the table. "I want you to know that what Ray did yesterday, that was all him, not us. We were just following orders because that is how things worked here. I understand how crews work. I grew up running with crews in Brownsville, and I know the difference between a boss and his soldiers on the ground. So we good then? Because I got a kid on the outside I am trying to get home to, and I can't do that if I am dead in here. We're good. But let me make something clear to you and your boys so there is no confusion about how things are going to be from now on. I am not here to run this place or take over from Ray. I just want to do my time in peace and go home when it is done." "I hear you, man, and I'll spread that word to everybody so they know you are not looking for trouble with nobody in here at all." The room started to breathe again as men turned back to their food and cards, sensing that the worst danger had passed for right now. "One more thing. Tell your boys that if anyone tries what Ray tried, they'll end up in the same hospital bed right next to him fast. That message will be received loud and clear. You won't have no problems from us or anybody else in this cell block, I promise that." Brick walked back to his boys and gathered them close, talking low and fast while they all nodded their heads and glanced over at Mike's table. A younger inmate named Jackson walked up to Mike's table with a book in his hand, moving careful like he was approaching a sleeping lion alone. "Excuse me, Mr. Tyson. I was wondering if you could sign this book for me. It is about your career, and I've read it 3 times already." Mike looked at the book. It had his picture on the front, fists raised, looking like a god of war that nobody could ever hope to beat. "You read a book about me 3 times, man? I haven't even read this thing once. They didn't even ask me to write any of it myself." "It is a good book, sir. It talks about how you grew up and how Cuss trained you, and it made me think maybe I could change too." Mike's face changed when he heard Cuss's name, something soft coming into his hard eyes as he reached out and took the book from Jackson's hands. He flipped through the pages and saw pictures of himself as a kid, pictures of Cuss, pictures of all the fights that made him famous worldwide. "That is me and Cuss right there. He used to make me recite these things he wrote about fear and discipline every single night before I went to sleep." "What kind of things did he make you say? If you don't mind me asking, I am trying to learn how to be stronger mentally while I am in here. Fear is like fire. If you learn to control it, it can help you. But if you let it run wild, it will burn you down completely." "That is deep, man. I wish somebody had told me stuff like that before I ended up in here doing 10 years for something really stupid I did." Mike signed the book with a pen another inmate handed over, his writing slow and careful like each letter meant something important to him right then. "Thank you so much, Mr. Tyson. This means more to me than you'll ever know, and I am going to keep this book forever when I get out." Jackson walked away, clutching the book to his chest, and the other inmates watched Mike with new eyes, seeing more than just a fighter now. Warden Thompson stood in the doorway watching the whole scene, his arms crossed, his face showing something that might have been surprise or maybe respect. "You see that, sir? First day out of solitary and he is signing books like he is still famous. These inmates are treating him like a movie star now. He is keeping the peace better than my guards ever did." Big Ray terrorized this block for 2 years, and Tyson ended that in one single punch. "You think he is going to be a problem or a solution while he is in here? Because right now I honestly can't tell which one it is going to be. Keep a close eye on him, but give him room to breathe. A caged lion is dangerous, but a respected one might just protect the whole cage." 1 week passed, and things had settled into a new normal. Mike had his table by the window, and a few men he talked to regular. Torres dealt cards across the table, his hands moving quick and smooth, while Mike watched with the focus of a man who took every game serious. "You are cheating, Torres. I saw you deal from the bottom of that deck just now, and you are going to pay for that in about 2 seconds. "My bad, champ, old habits from the street. You know how it is. A man's got to use every trick he has got to survive out there." Mike laughed too, a real laugh that surprised everyone who heard it because the baddest man on earth sounded like a regular guy having fun for once. The common room door opened and guards brought in a new prisoner, a tall, skinny kid who looked about 19 with eyes full of pure fear. The kid stood frozen at the entrance while the guards walked away, leaving him alone in a room full of men who had all done terrible things. Snake saw the new kid and smiled that cold smile of his, standing up from his table and starting to walk toward the easy target standing there alone. "Please don't hurt me," the kid said, his voice cracking, his back pressed against the cold wall as Snake got closer with every slow step forward. "Fresh fish in the tank. You are going to learn real quick who runs things around here and what it costs to stay alive in this place, boy." Mike pushed back his chair and stood up, walking across the room with that slow, heavy walk that made everyone stop what they were doing and watch. He stepped right between Snake and the scared kid, his wide back like a wall that nothing could get through without permission from the man who owned it. "This ain't your business, Tyson. Step aside and let me welcome the new fish the way we always do around here in this block. I just made it my business. This kid doesn't belong to you or anybody else, and if you touch him, I'll break both your hands off clean." Snake took 2 steps back, his hands coming up in surrender, his tough guy act melting away under Mike's stare like ice in the summer sun. What is your name, kid? And what are you in here for? Because you look way too young to be in a place like this with us. My name is Dre, sir. I am in here for robbery. I stole a car because I needed money to help my sick mom pay her hospital bills. Mike saw something in the kid's eyes, the same fear and anger and desperation that he had carried in his own heart at that age years ago. Come with me, Dre. You are going to sit at my table from now on, and nobody in here is going to lay a finger on you. Mike led the kid across the room to his table by the window, and every man in that room understood what had just happened without needing words. Sit down, young man. You just got the best protection in this whole prison, and you don't even know how lucky you are right now. I don't understand. Why would you help me? You don't even know me, and I am nobody important, just a kid who made a stupid mistake. Because somebody helped me once when I was just like you, a scared kid with nothing, and that man changed my whole life around forever. 1 month passed at Indiana Youth Center, and the yard had become a different place since Mike Tyson walked through those gates that cold morning. Mike stood at the free throw line and bounced the ball twice, his hands still quick even though they were made for fighting and not for sports. The ball left his fingers and flew through the air in a perfect curve, dropping through the net without touching the rim at all like magic. That is 3 in a row, Mike. You sure you never played ball before because you were shooting better than half the guys I grew up with back home. I played a little bit in Brownsville, but there was always somebody trying to fight me, so I spent more time boxing than playing anything else. The yard felt calm in a way it had not felt in years, with men actually enjoying themselves instead of looking over their shoulders for danger constantly. This place is like a different prison now. I've been here 5 years and never seen the yard this peaceful, not once in all that time. That is because everybody knows Mike is watching. Nobody wants to start trouble and end up like Big Ray did on that first crazy day here. Even the guards had relaxed their grip on their weapons, knowing that the real authority in this yard wore an orange jumpsuit and not a gray uniform. A white van with medical markings rolled through the main gate and stopped near the intake building, its engine cutting off with a final cough of smoke. The back door swung open and a ramp came down, and sitting in a wheelchair with his jaw wired shut was Big Ray, back from the hospital. His jaw was held together by metal pins and wire, his face still swollen and purple, but the fire in his eyes had not gone out one bit. His hands squeezed the arms of the wheelchair so hard the metal bent slightly under his grip as a nurse pushed him toward the main building door. Word spread through the yard like fire through dry grass, and men started moving toward the fence to watch Big Ray being wheeled back into prison. Mike, they're saying Big Ray is back. The nurses said his jaw is still broken, but he demanded to come back early, and he looks real mad. Mike's face did not change at all. He just nodded once and handed the basketball to Dre like they had been talking about the weather outside. Stay here with Torres and Jackson. Whatever happens next is between me and Ray, and I don't want you anywhere near it when things go down. But Mike, maybe I can help somehow. You took me in when nobody else would, and I owe you more than I can ever pay back. The best way you can help me is to stay out of trouble and get out of here when your time is done. That is all I want from you. 1 hour later, Big Ray sat in the common room at his old table, his crew standing around him like soldiers waiting for orders from their wounded general. He could not talk, so he wrote on a notepad, the pen scratching across paper as he gave instructions to the men who had failed him that day. Darnell leaned in to read what Ray had written, his face going pale as he understood what his boss was planning for Mike Tyson this time around. The words on the paper were clear and simple. They were going to jump Mike in the showers where there were no cameras and no guards watching close. I don't know about this, Ray. Last time didn't go so well, and this time he is going to be ready for us to make a move. Ray grabbed Snake by the collar and pulled him close, the rage in his eyes saying everything his wired jaw could not say out loud right now. I am with you, Ray. We go in together this time, all 6 of us with weapons, and nobody walks out until Tyson is on the ground for good. The common room door opened and Mike walked in by himself, his eyes finding Big Ray across the room like a magnet finding north in the dark. Ray saw Mike and his broken face tried to smile, the wires pulling at his flesh as he forced his damaged mouth into something that looked like victory already. Mike walked straight across the room toward the table where Ray and his crew sat waiting, his steps steady and slow, like a man with nowhere to rush. Darnell's hand slid toward the shank hidden in his waistband, his fingers wrapping around the tape handle as Mike got closer with every step he took forward. Every man in the room stopped breathing as Mike stood there facing Big Ray and his crew, the air thick with the promise of violence about to come. Mike grabbed a chair from a nearby table and pulled it over, sitting down right in front of Big Ray like he was joining friends for lunch. Ray's eyes narrowed with confusion because this was not what he expected. He expected Mike to be scared or angry, not sitting down calm and easy. "I came to talk, Ray. Just talk. No fighting, no drama. Just two men having a conversation about how this is going to go from here." Ray grabbed his notepad and wrote fast, the pen nearly tearing through the paper as he scratched out his response to Mike's unexpected offer of peace. The note said what Mike already knew. Big Ray wanted blood, and nothing else would satisfy the hate that was burning inside his broken chest right now. "I understand how you feel, Ray. A man's pride is all he has in a place like this, and I took yours in front of everyone." Something shifted in Ray's eyes, a flicker of surprise that this man who had destroyed him was now speaking to him with something that sounded like respect. "But you came at me with a knife on my first day. I didn't know you, never said a word to you, and you tried to kill me anyway." Ray's crew looked at each other because they all knew Mike was telling the truth. Ray had started the whole thing for no good reason at all. Brick remembered what Mike had told him that first week, that he was not here to run things, just to do his time and go home someday. "Here is what I know about you, Ray. You killed a man in a bar fight 10 years ago because he looked at your girl the wrong way." Ray sat up straighter in his wheelchair because nobody was supposed to know the real story of how he ended up in prison for the rest of his life. "You've got a daughter on the outside named Lisa, who is 16 now. She wrote you a letter last year, but you never wrote back to her at all." The mention of his daughter hit Ray like a punch to the gut, his hard face cracking for just a second before the walls went back up quick. How does he know all that stuff about Ray? I've known the man 5 years, and he never told me nothing about any daughter out there waiting for him. I've been watching and listening for a month now. That is what I do. That is what Cuss taught me to do before every fight I've ever had. The whole room was listening now, even pretending not to as the baddest man on the planet revealed that his power went way beyond just his fists. "I could destroy you and your whole crew right now, Ray. Not with my hands, but with what I know about every single one of you sitting here." "What do you know about me?" Darnell asked, his voice cracking like a boy's, suddenly very aware that this man had been studying them all along. "I know you got those burns on your face trying to save your little sister from a house fire. You are a hero, Darnell, not a criminal at heart." Darnell's eyes filled with water because nobody had called him a hero in 15 years. Not since the night he ran into that burning building alone and afraid. "And Snake over there, he has got a son with special needs who lives with his grandma now because Snake couldn't provide for him on the outside legally." Snake's hand fell away from his hidden shank because Mike had just spoken the thing that kept him up every single night, crying into his pillow alone. One by one, Mike had cut through the armor these men wore, finding the soft human beings hiding underneath all that prison toughness and fake hard looks they used. Ray slumped in his wheelchair, the fire in his eyes dimming as he realized that Mike Tyson was fighting a battle he had no weapons for at all. Mike knelt down so he was eye level with Ray in his wheelchair, his voice soft now, just between the two of them in this crowded public room. "Right back to your daughter, Ray. She is going to graduate high school next year and she needs to know her father thinks about her sometimes at least." Mike stood up and held out his hand to Big Ray. The same hand that had put him in the hospital was now offering him peace and respect. The whole room held its breath, as Big Ray stared at that hand, his mind fighting between the pride that had ruled him and something deeper calling him home. Ray's hand came up slow, shaking just a little, and reached out to take Mike's hand in a grip that meant the war between them was over now. They shook hands, the heavyweight champion of the world and the man who had ruled this prison with fear, and a new order was born right there. I don't believe what I just saw. Big Ray just made peace with the man who broke his jaw, and nobody had to die for it to happen. The room came back to life as men started breathing and talking again, the shadow that had hung over everything finally lifting and letting in some light at last. Warden Thompson stood at the door with his mouth hanging open because he had just watched something happen that he would tell people about for the rest of his life. Did he just end a prison war without throwing a single punch? I've been a guard for 12 years and I've never seen anything even close to that. That man is more dangerous with his words than he ever was with his fists. And I am suddenly very glad he is going to be on our side in here. 3 months passed, and the prison had transformed into something nobody thought possible, a place where men could do their time without fear of violence every day. Keep your elbow in tight and follow through with your wrist. Basketball is just like boxing. It is all about form and practice and believing you can do it. Dre focused on the rim and shot the ball, his form much better now after months of practice and encouragement from the most unlikely coach in the world. The ball swished through the net and Dre jumped up with his fists raised, while the other men in the yard cheered like it was a championship game. Big Ray sat on a bench nearby, his jaw finally healed, watching the scene with something that looked almost like happiness on his once angry face now. In his hands he held a letter, 3 pages of his daughter's handwriting, telling him about school and her friends, and how she was excited to see him someday. Mike walked over and sat down on the bench next to Ray, both men looking out at the yard where peace had replaced the fear that once ruled everything. She wrote me back, Mike. Lisa wrote me back and she said she forgives me for being gone, and she wants to visit me next month if she can. That is real good, Ray. Family is all we got in this world, and it took me way too long to learn that lesson for myself the hard way. Why did you help me, man? I tried to kill you on your first day, and instead of hating me forever, you showed me how to be a better person. Because somebody did the same thing for me when I was a scared, angry kid with nothing. His name was Cuss, and he saw something in me nobody else could see. The yard around them was full of men who had found something they never expected to find in prison, hope and a chance to become better than they were before. Cuss told me that the measure of a man isn't how hard he can hit, it is how much pain he can take and still keep moving forward anyway. Your Cuss sounds like he was a wise man. I wish I had someone like that when I was coming up instead of the streets that raised me wrong. It is not too late, Ray. You can be that person for someone else, maybe for Dre or one of the other young guys in here who need guidance. Dre came running across the yard with a piece of paper in his hand. His face lit up with the kind of joy that made everyone around him smile too. Mike, Ray, look at this. I got my GED scores back and I passed everything. And the counselor says I can start taking college classes next semester here. That is what I am talking about, Dre. That piece of paper is going to mean more than any punch I ever threw when you get out of this place. Ray stood up and shook Dre's hand firmly, looking at the young man with the same protective eyes that Mike had shown him 3 months ago that first day. You keep studying hard, young man, and if anybody gives you trouble while you are trying to learn, you come find me and I'll handle it personally for you. 3 men stood together in the yard as the sun began to set. A champion, a former enemy, and a kid who had found a new family behind bars. Yard time is over, gentlemen. Everybody head inside for count, and no pushing or shoving. We've had a good day, so let's keep it that way, please. The inmates moved toward the building in an orderly line. No fighting, no threats, just men going through the routine of prison life without the usual chaos and fear. Mike looked back at the empty yard one more time, thinking about how far he had come from that first morning when Big Ray had tried to kill him. The warden stopped Mike at the door and pulled him aside, his voice low so only the two of them could hear what he had to say next. I've been running prisons for 20 years, Tyson, and I've never seen anyone change the culture of a place the way you have in just 3 months here. I just did what my trainer taught me to do. Warden, study your opponent, find their weakness, and use it to win the fight without throwing punches if you can. Well, whatever you call it, you've made my job a whole lot easier, and you've given some of these men something they never had before, which is hope. That night in the common room, Mike sat at his usual table by the window, reading a book while the other inmates watched television and played cards nearby. The book was The Count of Monte Cristo, a story about a man who was wrongly imprisoned and who used his time in jail to become the person he was meant to be. Torres sat down across from Mike with 2 cups of coffee, sliding one over without asking if Mike wanted it, because he already knew the answer after 3 months together. Thanks, Torres. You know, this book is about a man who gets revenge on everyone who wronged him, but I don't think that is the real lesson in here. What do you think the real lesson is then? Because from what I heard about that story, it is all about getting even with your enemies in the end. The real lesson is that revenge isn't worth it. The Count destroys his enemies, but he loses his soul in the process and ends up alone and empty inside. The common room hummed with the quiet sounds of men living their lives behind bars, each one carrying their own stories and their own hopes for what came next. Big Ray walked over to the table and sat down next to Torres, the letter from his daughter still in his hand like it was made of gold. Mike, I need your help with something. I want to write back to Lisa, but I don't know what to say after being gone from her life so long. Mike closed his book and gave Ray his full attention, understanding exactly how hard it was to reach out to someone you had let down for so many years. Just tell her the truth, Ray. Tell her you are sorry for not being there. Tell her you are proud of who she is becoming, and tell her you love her. It is that simple. Just say you are sorry and you love her. I thought I had to explain everything I did wrong and beg her to forgive me somehow. Kids don't need explanations, Ray. They just need to know their parents love them. That is all I ever wanted from my mom and dad growing up poor. The lights flickered twice to signal that it was almost time for lockdown, and inmates started finishing their games and conversations and heading toward their cells for the night. Mike stood up and stretched his arms over his head, his body still powerful and ready, even after 3 months of prison food and limited training space available. Hey Mike, thanks for making this place bearable, man. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come in here and changed everything around for us. I didn't change anything, Torres. I just showed people what they already had inside them, the same way Cuss showed me what I had inside myself years ago. Mike walked down the cell block to his cell, passing men who nodded at him with respect, some with fear, but most with something that looked like hope now. He sat down on his bed and pulled out a small photo from under his pillow, a picture of Cuss that someone had sent him from the outside world. The photo showed Cuss with his arm around a young Mike, both of them smiling in the gym where everything had started so many years ago in Catskill, New York. I am trying to make you proud, old man. I am trying to be the person you always said I could be, not just the fighter but the man too. The guard walked past and looked in, seeing the heavyweight champion of the world lying on a tiny bed in a tiny cell, and kept walking without saying a word. Mike stared at the ceiling and thought about his first day here, how he had walked in as a fighter, and somehow became something more important than that. Outside the prison walls, the world kept moving, full of people who would never understand what happened inside this place during Mike Tyson's first day and the days after. The moon hung over the prison like a promise that there would always be another day, another chance to become the person you were meant to be all along. Mike smiled and closed his eyes, knowing that he had won his most important fight, not with his fists, but with his heart and his mind together. The cell block fell silent as men settled into sleep, dreaming of freedom and family and second chances that they never thought possible before Mike Tyson walked through those gates. And in his small cell, The baddest man on the planet slept like a baby. Cuss's photo pressed against his heart, finally at peace with who he was becoming.